There's a war right now in America being waged when it comes to mainstream media and how the news is reported. And it's a quiet war because honestly, why would the mainstream media report a war happening against themselves? But that's exactly what President Donald Trump has been doing. And quite honestly, he's winning that war. Right here on American Advocates, I'm going to cover some breaking news that happened today, as well as go over just how our very own president is waging a war that he's winning against our legacy media. It all started back in December with President Donald Trump's lawsuit against ABC News in a defamation case against George Slopadopoulous, as Trump would call him, George Stephanopoulos. And the lawsuit, as you can see here, wound up resulting in ABC News giving him $15 million to settle out the defamation suit.
Well, ABC News has agreed to settle a defamation lawsuit that Donald Trump filed against them. The network will pay Trump $15 million, which will go towards his presidential library, and $1 million for Trump's attorney fees. Trump sued ABC News anchor George Stephanopoulos after an interview with Congresswoman Nancy Mace last March, where he claimed the anchor defamed him after Stephanopoulos repeatedly said that Trump was found liable for rape. The jury actually determined Trump was liable for sexual abuse, which has a distinct definition under New York state law.
But the best part is President Donald Trump didn't stop after that defamation lawsuit with ABC News. No, you see, President Donald Trump had been spited 4 years prior. That defamation lawsuit happened in December, and Trump was busy with another one that wound up ending in January against Meta. Meta agreed to pay $25 million to settle lawsuit from Trump after January 6th suspension. That's right. If you remember correctly, during the Capitol riot incident, the January 6th riots that the liberals pretend to care oh so much about, Meta had suspended President Donald Trump's social media accounts. In fact, most social media platforms deplatformed President Donald Trump. And the most absurd thing about this is that this was the sitting U.S. president at that time, and they felt they had the power to deplatform him. He's the head of the nation. He's the leader of the country. And they took him off their platforms. Social media is prevalent nowadays. It's the major form of communication. Sure, he could have gone to the press, but that takes time. That's no longer the fastest way to do it. Completely disgraceful, in my opinion. And it was another epic win under President Donald Trump's belt. In fact, in a little side note here, these social media platforms aren't learning. Take a look at this. Vice President J.D. Vance just recently, back in the middle of June, was suspended on Blue Sky just 12 minutes after his first post. Granted, Blue Sky is a super liberal social media site, and to be honest with you, Vice President J.D. Vance was tweeting about it humorously on X, celebrating the suspension because he pretty much knew it was coming, and he was simply on Blue Sky to troll, just to be straight up, by pretty much his own admission without saying it. However, he's the vice president of the United States, the number 2 guy in America. These social media platforms cannot be doing this. They should absolutely have no right to deplatform people in a leadership position in this country whose voice matters. I actually hope that something happens to Blue Sky over this, similar as what happened to Meta, because as funny as it is in the moment, it's really not all that funny. These social media platforms should not be allowed to exercise this amount of power over our leaders, our elected officials. We, the people, have determined that they will represent our voice. And these social media platforms stampede all over that, all because they're emotional. Disgusting. But now for the breaking news of today. Paramount will pay $16 million in a settlement with Trump over the 60 Minutes interview. And in case you've forgotten or you're not aware, what 60 Minutes interview was that? It's the now infamous Kamala Harris campaign interview when she was on the campaign trail campaigning against President Donald Trump and competing for the U.S. presidency. She had what was an obvious, disastrous interview with 60 Minutes, but because it's the liberal mainstream media, they touched up and edited her interview and gave her second chances to answer questions in a despicable fashion, in a way that they would never do for a Republican politician. They love when President Donald Trump stumbles in speech. They love when he makes a mistake and says something in error. They would never, ever give him an opportunity to re-answer a question while editing out the flawed answer originally. But for Kamala Harris, That's exactly what they did.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
Well, Bill, the work that we have done has resulted in a number of movements in that region by Israel that were very much prompted by or a result of many things, including our advocacy for what needs to happen in the region.
But it seems that Prime Minister Netanyahu is not listening.
We are not going to stop pursuing what is necessary for the United States to be clear about where we stand on the need for this war to end.
Absolutely horrendous. And the whole basis of President Donald Trump's lawsuit here against Paramount and 60 Minutes was on that of election interference. Perhaps it would have been a little bit difficult for President Donald Trump to actually prove that in court. However, the very fact of the matter is this: they propped up Kamala Harris as a much better looking candidate than she actually was, because they were perpetuating a false reality of who she was, making her look a lot more composed, well thought out, and better spoken. And that could affect election results. Thankfully, it didn't. The American people aren't dumb. And nowadays, with the freedom of the internet being the way that it is, we were all able to do our own research. But had this have been 20 years ago, that tactic by 60 Minutes might have worked. And that's the liberal mainstream media's main problem nowadays. They have fallen too far behind the 8 ball now to social media and the internet, and there's really nothing they can do about it. So it looks even more pathetic when they try stuff like that and ultimately fail. I'm happy to see them lose $16 million to President Donald Trump. In fact, I wish it was 3 times that amount. In my opinion, it's too small of a fine. They're gaslighting the American public, and unfortunately for generations like the boomers, not all of them of course, but many of them who still rely on mainstream media for their primary news sources, it could have worked, and it probably did on some people. But what's next when it comes to President Donald Trump's war against legacy media, mainstream media, and the fake news? Well, we've gotten hints now at what could be up and coming in regards to President Donald Trump warring against the media, specifically CNN. You see, CNN has probably made one of the biggest mistakes as a media company they possibly could have. And that's not to say that everyone who works there is to blame, but unfortunately, they have gone on to report and openly promote an app for illegal immigrants in this country to use to be able to track ICE agents before, during, and after their raiding and making arrests. Take a listen to this when a reporter asked President Donald Trump, who's standing alongside his Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Kristi Noem, about CNN openly promoting this app. Listen to Trump's response.
Mr. President and Madam Secretary, CNN yesterday pushed an app that lets you track where ICE agents are. Tom Homan was saying that perhaps CNN should be prosecuted for that. That's obstruction of law enforcement. Your response?
Yeah, we're working with the Department of Justice to see if we can prosecute them for that, because what they're doing is actively encouraging people to avoid law enforcement activities, operations, and we're going to actually go after them and prosecute them with the partnership of PAM if we can, because what they're doing we believe is illegal.
And they may be prosecuted also for having given false reports on the attack in Iran. They were given totally false reports. It was totally obliterated, and our people have to be celebrated, not come home and say, what do you mean we didn't hit the target? We hit the target person. You know, the pilots came home and they said we hit the target person. So they may be very well prosecuted for that. What they did there we think is totally illegal. Okay, let's go.
CNN has been an absolute disgrace over the past 2 weeks. As President Donald Trump said, they falsely reported on the strikes on Iran and the level of success accomplished there, relying too heavily on preliminary early leaks from unreliable sources that they claimed were reliable. And the reason why they claimed they were reliable to begin with was because those leaks fit the narrative that they crave, the narrative of Trump failing. Now, of course, as time has gone on, they've been made to look absolutely foolish as usual when it comes to the Iran strikes. We're now almost 100% confident that their nuclear facilities are utterly obliterated. But to make matters worse, they then went on to promote that ICE agent app, exposing ICE agents to incredible danger by doing so, and aiding and abetting, technically, criminals, people who are here illegally. It may be a civil matter, deportations, but they're still here illegally. And a mainstream media network like CNN openly promoting an app that could put ICE agents' lives at risk and help people evade them is utterly unacceptable. So as it stands now, we've gone from ABC News paying President Donald Trump $15 million in the defamation lawsuit, to Meta paying him $25 million for deplatforming him, to Paramount now today paying him $16 million for election interference, to now President Donald Trump could be openly prosecuting an entire mainstream media news network. The war wages on, and I'm excited to see what the results are because, in my opinion, this is long overdue. But what's your opinion on this matter? First of all, if you like this war that Trump is waging on the fake news media, give this video a like and subscribe to the channel. However, if you think that the mainstream media like CNN, MSNBC, and ABC are reliable sources full of great information, then dislike this video, get off YouTube, turn on your Tube TV, and continue on being a crusty, brainwashed, programmed boomer. Glory to America and God bless President Trump. God bless America.